3 days later, I walked beside Azhûra through the streets of the Forbidden Temple. It was surreal. Leaves lay scattered across the cobbled paths, their edges curling inward, crunching beneath our steps. Vines draped over the temple buildings, their colour a stark red against the grey stone houses. The air was sharp, not quite winter, but cold enough to make me pull my hourie tight around me. I glanced at Azhûra, careful not to look too long. She moved with grace, as if the cold didn't touch her at all. I told myself I wasn't watching her, just keeping an eye out. 3 nights in a row, I'd had dreams. The first night, I'd stood in that craggy wasteland, rain crashing down around me. The second, I'd been tangled in a twisting world of webs and flesh, piled into spiraling towers. The third, I'd moved through a misty forest, trees looming utterly still, their silence deep and tender. Each dream had been different, but one thing had stayed the same. No matter where I'd found myself, I'd heard that awful voice, damp in my ear, warning me not to trust this elf I now walked alongside.
Among the abyssal gods, there are only 3 we serve here,
Azhûra said, pulling me from my thoughts.
We know their names: Zarraven, the god of change; Vexlankar, lady of lies; and Lejena, keeper of the forgotten. Together they form the Urden triad, forged in hatred for a common enemy during the War of Dawn.
Her words slid smoothly into the silence between us, filling it like smoke. I tried not to let them settle too deeply in my mind, but they stuck anyway. I knew the War of Dawn. Even the priests back home mentioned it from time to time, though they spoke of it differently. A time before everything, before men or elves, when gods and devils walked the earth, and the river of time was just a gentle stream.
Beyond the veil, the Urden each rule a realm of their own. Zarraven governs the shattered reaches, Vexlankar reigns over Arakul, and Lejena resides in the Forest of Eternal Loss.
The Forest of Eternal Loss? Azhûra smiled faintly.
It's where memories go to die, the breeding grounds of the Owlin, spirits who sired the first Mejena during the Great Longing in the Age of Hollow. As children of Lady Lejena, the Mejena protect the forgotten places of the world.
That didn't seem particularly relevant to anything, I thought, furrowing my brow. Who exactly is Lejena to you? Back home, we call her Helesh, or Sheena, with an S, I think.
Ah, yes, the infamous Mind Eater, mother of witches, if I'm not mistaken.
I think so, yeah.
Then do yourself a favour and forget everything you've heard,
said Azhûra, her voice catching an edge.
In Loch Lalesh, we recognise the Lady of Loss for what she truly is.
And what's that?
The soft embrace. You felt her touch already, my child, even if you did not realise it at the time.
I blinked. What do you mean?
The Forsaken Garden. You spent a month there. Surely you sensed her presence, her grace.
I thought back to the garden, the empty eyes of the statue, the strange peace that settled over me when I gave in to the silence, and the mushrooms, the ones I'd eaten. A chill curled down my spine. Did you know about that, too?
Lejena offers release to the weary. She welcomes the lost, the aching, those who carry too much and need to let go.
I nodded like I understood, and my thoughts circled to the dream I dreamt last night. The forest. What if that had been the forest of eternal loss? A ridiculous idea, of course. The forest of eternal loss wasn't even real. Just a place conjured up in the minds of Ash Elf fanatics to make sense of their world views. And yet, in the Forsaken Garden, I had felt it, hadn't I? The pull of oblivion. What if the voice I kept hearing in my dreams was the voice of Legina herself? The thought almost made me laugh. What a bizarre notion. Why would one of these demons, the Urden, tell me not to trust the chosen of Zoraven Dural?
You seem distracted, child.
Not in the least, I quickened to say. I'm all ears.
You doubt the Urden.
There was no accusation in her voice, just cold certainty.
Not that I blame you. You grew up far from these truths.
What truths?
The priests of the Empire would have you believe that the world is a prison, a place of punishment. But the Urden teach something else. According to them, this world, in all its imperfection, is exactly as it should be. It's not a cage, nor a sentence, but an opportunity.
An opportunity for what?
Suffering.
Her voice was smooth, too smooth for what she was saying.
And through suffering, growth. Thus lies the path, not through escape, but through endurance.
Azhûra led us beneath an archway into a small garden with a dried-out fountain. Reluctantly, I followed, worried what she might do to me once we stepped into the shadows. I tried to focus on her words. I didn't like them much. Suffering as a virtue. It felt wrong. Stupid, even. The idea was strange and unnatural. Like an octopus trying to climb a tree. Yet, in a way I didn't want to admit, it almost made sense. Back home, priests talked about salvation. They said the world was broken, a place we were meant to escape. Before the First Age, in what scholars referred to as the Long Dark, the prophets of dust had promised that someday the world would end and a perfect one would rise in its place, one without pain, without death. Didn't you say Legina helps those who've had enough of pain?
Something to that effect, yes.
It doesn't make sense, then, I said. If the Urden thinks suffering is good, why would Legina offer release from it? Azhûra's lips curled into a smile.
Well caught, child. You have a good mind for this.
Her words landed somewhere between a compliment and a test. I tried not to let it show, but a flicker of pride stirred in me anyway. So, I asked, brushing my hair back, how do you make sense of it?
The way of the Urden is about balance,
Azhûra said, and sat down on the edge of the fountain. She gestured for me to join her, but I stayed standing.
Legina is the goddess of oblivion.
Azhûra continued, slowing the pace of her words.
Through the darkness she embodies, all things end. Every child born into this world will one day wither and die. Every memory you hold will eventually fade to nothing.
There was a sadness to her voice, cold as the air around us. A gust of wind blew through the garden, and I pressed my houri tighter.
And then there is our Raven, the Lord of Descent. He teaches us to carve our paths while we can, to struggle and grow stronger, cleverer, better, even as we feel the weight of life pressing down on us. However, his toil is sufferable only because it ends. Without an end, Life would become an unbearable weight, grinding us down. It is Lejena who grants us release from that burden, and in doing so, she makes our Raven's struggle tolerable, possible even. Without her, there would be no mercy, only exhaustion, and even the mightiest would crumble beneath the weight of our Lord.
She turned her head, gazing off between the weeping willows. Recalling the moment, I realized that the words she spoke upset her. But at the time, I did not catch it.
"Do you see, child?"
she said, turning back to me.
"Without Zarraven, Lejena's realm would be empty, a hollow, meaningless void. But without Lejena, Zarraven's path would be an endless torment, and in that balance, we find meaning."
Azhûra picked a leaf from the ground and studied it, turning it over between her fingers as if she could see the entire cycle of life and death written in its veins.
The root weavers of Nanatha have a name for their union. They call it the dance of struggle and surrender. Zarraven, relentless, pressing forward. Lejena, yielding, drawing him back. Each movement fuels the other, each victory temporary, each defeat inevitable. One cannot exist without the other.
Another gust of wind blew through the garden, and I shivered, though not entirely from the cold. Something about Azhûra's words felt unescapable, like a truth I hadn't realized I already believed.
And then there is Vexlongkar, the Ebony Widow. She teaches us that everything could be a lie, even the ideas I've just shared with you. For all we know, the dance of struggle and surrender is nothing but a story.
So what's the point then? I snapped. Why bother to understand anything if everything could be a lie?
Ah, child, that is the point. If you wait for certainty, you'll wait forever. Vexlongkar teaches us to dance with doubt, just as our Raven and Lejena dance, endlessly, painfully, always moving, never breaking free.
I wasn't sure I understood, not fully, but something about it tugged at me, drawing me deeper, as if there was a thread buried somewhere in the words. One I needed to follow. What about the other demortal gods? I asked, though I wasn't sure I wanted to know the answer.
There are countless abyssal ones. They don't have direct access to our plane of reality, but their influence is everywhere. It moves beneath and beyond us, slipping through cracks in reality, lurking in shadows, passing unseen through the dark. For instance, there is Delunark the Touched, whose mind Vexlongkar shattered by tying him up and tormenting him with a feather for countless eons. Since then, he's been known as the Mad God.
I blinked, trying to wrap my head around it. She tickled him?
According to myth, yes.
I pictured it. A god in the throes of laughter, gasping, screaming for release, with the spider god perched above, slowly peeling away at his sanity. Endlessly. I shivered. Was that how Azhûra imagined life without death? I glanced at her, wondering if these stories were something she believed in, or if she was just toying with me. Her face betrayed nothing.
Then there are Shilvana and Havrani Duch, whose ancient forests burned when the slave king Urden of the Dimmergap crossed the Sea of Cries in the age of the Witch Kings, bringing the Urden with him, or, as Urden called them, the Breakers of Chains. Their arrival scorched the land of Loch Lalesh, ushering in the Age of Ash and carving the way for the birth of my people.
It was so much to take in. The names, the myths, the philosophies. It crowded my thoughts like too many voices speaking at once. Part of me regretted having agreed to these lessons. And yet, there was something disturbingly alluring about these dark tales.
Then there is Venera. I believe you've heard of her before, have you not?
I shook my head.
Are you certain? Before you came into my care, you were captured by an elf named Parath Azhûra, were you not?
That name hit me like a slap. Memories rushed back. The ash wastes, the cart, the gag, the bastard cutting his tongue and spitting in my face. He was going to take me to his dark mistress. Dren told me it was a fate worse than anything I could imagine. Azhûra gave a soft hum.
He was right. Out of all the members of the Veiled Council, Sadhara Orm Harum is the last you'd want to fall into the hands of. The abyssal one she serves goes by many names. Flogger of slaves, goddess of agony, she who mocks the dying. If you thought your arrival here was a nightmare, you wouldn't like the reception Venera's chosen would have given you, that's for certain.
A chill ran through me at the mention of my arrival here. How could Azhûra speak of it like it was nothing? She continued without pause, as though my reaction hadn't even registered.
Then there's Hirareen of Nevergrave, worshipped by the greenskins in the mountains to the east, and Zarena, Lady of Sorrow, with cults hidden in ancient temples deep beneath the earth. There is Velioth, the Night Prince, Mikael, the Fungal, Zarolka the Drowned, and that's barely scratching the surface. You got Dimna, Princess of Twilight, Ferolia and Ara, the Hunted and the Hunter, Shan the Shadow, Tarnosh the Broken. There are countless abyssal ones.
I drew a hand over my face, rubbing my forehead.
Fret not. It's a lot to take in, I know. For now, focus on the Urden. They are the abyssal ones you need concern yourself with. After all, it was the Urden who birthed the Age of Ash, helping my people build their first civilizations and establish their dynasties. Others in the Veiled Council may have forgotten, distracted by lesser gods, but I remember. Here at the Forbidden Temple, we know that in the vastness of the abyss, the Urden reign supreme. Learn their ways, child. After that, you may attempt to expand your understanding to the other gods beyond the veil.
What about Garavendral? I asked.
Garavendral?
For a second she looked puzzled, as if she'd never heard about the archdevil himself. Then a look of recognition passed her face, and she gave a soft, scoffing laugh.
Oh, he doesn't exist.
I frowned. Yes, he does. He's the worst of them. The Demon King. He kidnapped and violated Elenaith, the Moon Maiden, wife of Great Leiron, and that's what triggered the War of Dawn. Azhûra's laugh grew cruel before she caught herself, smoothing it into a polite smile. But not before I saw it. A crack in her mask, her true self glimmering beneath. What's so funny? I asked, narrowing my eye.
Forgive me, child, it's just... Garavendral is a lie. A nightmare conjured by the prophets of dust during the long dark.
That's not true. He is a monster.
Yes, the king of rape, the father of horror. I've heard it all before. But think, child, does his name not remind you of someone else?
Her words turned over in my mind, slow at first, like a rusted lock resisting its key. And then, with a soft clunk, it opened. "Zaraven," I whispered. Azhûra smiled, satisfied.
Exactly. Garavendral is nothing but a twisted reflection of Zarravendral, a convenient monster for the Empire's narrative. Good gods, bad demons, Laumian gods, pure and holy, the Demoral gods, wicked and profane.
She waved a hand, dismissing the idea like smoke.
The Imperial Church and Inquisition needs a villain to keep people afraid and obedient. Everything they fear, everything they can't control, becomes something demonic. Witchcraft, child sacrifices, devils.
I shook my head, struggling to make sense of it all. So, the prophets of dust just made him up?
Not exactly. They didn't invent Garavendral out of thin air. They twisted Zarraven until he became unrecognizable. And to this very day, the Imperial Church keeps that lie alive.
She sharpened her voice, digging her gaze deeper into mine.
The realms beyond the Veil aren't hell, Emilia. There is no hell. The abyssal ones belong to this world. Earth and shadow, root and stone. Their power coils beneath the soil, like the threads of the undergrowth that bind life and decay together in a vast, endless web. Nothing burns in their domains. Nothing is wasted.
You said the Urden burned Loch Lalesh.
Only so that something new could rise from its ashes. Their flames were destructive, yes, but also rejuvenating. They weren't endless like the hellfire those Imperial priests blabber on about. As with everything that the Urden hold dear, even infernos must die.
She turned the brittle leaf she'd picked up earlier, tracing its withering edges with her fingers.
The abyssal realms are not places of eternal torment. They are places of becoming, of transformation, life and death, feeding into each other without end.
I swallowed, the strange logic gnawing at me. If she was right, everything I'd been taught my entire life was a lie. But if the abyssal ones are part of nature, I said, voice uncertain, why does everyone fear them?
Because fear is easier than understanding, and because the Empire needs fear to maintain its power.
They're lying.
You could say that, and they've been doing it since the Long Dark. At this point, I doubt anyone worshipping the Lamea even realize their religion is a lie.
What's to say you aren't lying? I dared ask. Her eyes narrowed.
Careful, child.
I held my ground. If Vexlankar teaches that everything might be a lie, how do you know your version is the truth? For a moment, Azhûra didn't move, and the stillness between us stretched long and quiet, nearly breaking under its own weight. She studied me, her expression calm. But there, beneath the surface, I saw it. The tiniest hesitation, as if my accusation made sense to her. Her voice, when it came, was devoid of all charm. It was icy cold, as it had been the day I met her.
Doubt is a tool, Emilia, not a home.
That doesn't answer the question. She crushed the leaf in her hand with a soft crackle. She stood, and for a brief second, it looked like she might reach for me. But she didn't.
Doubt is a tool, not a home. If you dwell in it too long, it will unmake you.
Her words hung heavy in the air between us, deliberate and pointed. Was that a warning or a threat? I stiffened, but as I gazed into the light of her eyes, something unexpected stirred within me. It was a strange kind of sensation, dangerously close to approval. For some reason, I thought about the captain on the ship who'd sailed me to Blotseth. Before leaving him, I'd subtly threatened him of what might happen if he didn't let me be in peace. I looked at Azhûra, and for the first time since I arrived at this place, I saw myself in her. More than that, the words she had spoken had weight, more weight than the priest's sermons back home, more than the tales of witches and demons I'd grown up with. There was truth in what she said. Maybe not the whole truth, but enough to make me wonder if the stories I'd taken for granted my whole life were as brittle as that crushed leaf in her hand. I looked at her, and I knew I should be afraid. I was. But truth be told, I was also growing curious about her, and her terrifying worldview. Dangerously curious. And that scared me even more.